My name is Alan Keyes. I like to think that I am more times than not with God, but there are exceptions to that, I'm afraid. I have no other claim to be here than that I am an American of conscience who believes in and applauds what is being pursued in this bill, which is an effort to highlight and eliminate, insofar as possible, the scourge of abortion from this nation. I wonder, though, whether we all of us appreciate the implications of it. And as I've been sitting here in the course of the morning listening to it, we rightly, as Americans, because we believe in individuals, right? Individuals and individual persons, and what happens to those individuals is really important to us. But very often in the course of our discussion, we forget that the primary obligation of government and of those who represent us as a people in government is to take care of the whole people. And by whole people, I do not mean the sum of individuals. I mean the people as a whole. And the people as a whole has a vested interest in certain concepts without which we would, as individuals, be entirely insecure in the face of the superior power of government, and without which, as individuals, we would be constantly living in fear of one another, because we would expect that there are no limits on what those with superior power may do to us with impunity. One emblem of that in our society is a principle of law that is extremely important and often emphasized, I suppose, to the point of having a great nuisance value by those who are appearing in court. It's something called the presumption of innocence. Now, the presumption of innocence means that if someone wants to inflict a penalty upon you under our law, they must basically prove that you're guilty of something. And that presumption of innocence means that we enter the courtroom with the burden of proof, not on us as individuals to show that we didn't do it somehow, to prove the negative, but rather a positive burden of proof on those who accuse us and who are saying that we have somehow done something wrong. We somehow represent something that has inflicted damage upon another human being, damage upon the society as a whole. We are innocent until proven guilty. Now that brings me to my one reservation about the bill now under consideration. It's one reservation. And we've heard a lot about it in the course of this morning. And it's the concept of viability. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, well, this is very strange. We have an individual human being, and we're all supposed to care about individuals. And that individual human being's situation is under scrutiny. Ordinarily, if it is a matter of law, we would automatically presume that the burden of proof lies with those who wish to inflict a penalty on that individual. But this is the one case in our law when we have given in to an approach that assumes that the one who is most likely to receive fatal damage from any decision that we make, whether it's in court or out of court or as individuals with respect to our obligations to our offspring, we must abandon the premise that you're innocent until proven guilty and adopt the premise that it's for you to prove that this penalty should not be inflicted upon you. See, I would think that this ought to focus our attention on the fact that we are not obliged to simply to consider what relative impact what we do has on this individual or that individual or how they compare to one another. we are obliged to consider as well its impact on the whole people of the United States. What is going to happen? What is happening to us as a people because we have withdrawn the presumption of innocence from humanity itself? And that is what the issue before us here represents. Now, why do I say that? I say we have withdrawn it from humanity itself because the presumption of innocence is one of those things that attaches to us under our understanding as a matter of law. It attaches to us because of the premise of our founding, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that it is the task of our common government to secure those rights. Now, what does the word right mean? A lot of people confuse right with freedom, but they are not the same thing. If somebody asks you what's the opposite of right, you don't say slavery, you don't say bondage, you don't say imprisonment. No, the opposite of right is wrong. And we are therefore talking about something that makes a distinction and relies on a distinction between right and wrong. Who is the ultimate determiner of that distinction according to our creed, our understanding? God Almighty. That places the question beyond our reach. God's determinations are beyond our reach. This isn't a matter of the agreement of human wills. Our rights, our unalienable rights, are an agreement of will with God. And every advance of justice in the history of the United States has been based upon that premise, that there must be an agreement between what we propose to do as a people and the rights vested in each and every individual, not by government, not by parents, not by any human will or authority whatsoever, but by our Creator God. Now, I know there are people who immediately think, don't bring God into this discussion, but I'm sorry. I did not bring it into the discussion. The founders of this country brought it into the discussion. They made it the very first thing that was said about justice by the American people as such when they stepped on the stage of the history of the world. The very first thing was to point to two premises of God's will. One of them equality, and the other God endowed unalienable rights. And those two things were linked, so that we, all of us as human beings, have a claim to be respected in our unalienable rights. Well, that raises an interesting question, doesn't it? On what basis can we withdraw that claim? Is there some human tribunal that can deprive us of those rights? We fought a terrible war in America over this very question. And we're being told, by the way, that there's no hint of the respect that is due to all human beings, whatever their supposed state of quality or inequality. See, this is the wonderful thing about America. You don't have to prove anything to be entitled to that respect for your God-endowed unalienable right. All you accept that you are a human being. And at one time, it was quite obvious. And it was obvious to Justice Blackmun when he wrote Roe versus Wade that this was a key point. And he didn't say to the state of Texas, that point is irrelevant, get it out of here. No, he didn't say that. Quite the contrary. What he said was, if I may quote as accurately as I can, if the suggestion of personhood be established, the complainant's case fails, is gone. And what is the suggestion of personhood? Personhood in that context is not a legalistic concept. It is rather a concept tied to the laws of nature and of nature's God, the laws on the basis of which, as a whole people, we claim our right to govern ourselves. That means, by the way, that if we back away from that understanding of personhood, we destroy our claim. What does that mean, Alan? It means that we return to a world in which there is no transcendent claim of equality in respect of basic rights for all humanity, regardless of power, regardless of status, regardless of the judgments of any human being. See? Now, that means that involved in all of this.
Ambassador Keyes,
Yes.
and
Am I running out of time already?
I allowed 3 other speakers to go about a minute and a half over, and you're at the 10-minute limit, but it's going to take you a little while to wind down. So I wanted to give you a little warning.
Yes, thank you for that.
So if you would wrap up in the next minute and a half, 2 minutes. Thank you.
Well, the simple point is that in imposing any criteria beyond the God-endowed unalienable right, we are withdrawing the presumption of innocence from the unborn child, disregarding the universal presumption that applies to all human beings equally. And by the way, that equally means prior to any human judgment, circumstance, or situation. That's what it means to be God-endowed. No professionals get to decide if you're viable. No professionals get to decide if you're equal, for that decision is already made by God. I would not be sitting here talking to you today as a black American if I had not been the benefit of movements that stood on that understanding of equality, which is not equal money, not equal housing, not equal treatment. It is the equality of my very being to be respected so that no one can transgress the will of God for my existence, but they are to be held accountable. This is the most deep, the most thoroughgoing assault that can be made on the rights of Americans as a people. It destroys the very first claim, without which no other claim against power can be made. Because when power has the aggregate advantage, what are you to say against it except I surrender? Well, I know what I say as an American. I say that what you do is against the will of God, and though it cost me my life, I will stand for right and justice. That's what people did for my ancestors. And that's what I must do for our posterity. And I believe if you ponder it, this is the challenge now faced by all of us as we deal with the question of abortion. Will we stand for the right that allows us to be the kings and queens of America, participating in our membership in the sovereign body of the people? Or will we withdraw it from our humanity, beginning in the person of each and every human being in the womb? We all inescapably come into existence by some such means. And if we do, we will not just be destroying the lives of millions of human beings. We will have destroyed the heart, the soul, the core, the very foundation of our identity and of our right of self-government as a people.